Right. Well, hello, Mick. Super to see you here today. Just a little bit of context for everybody. I'm Adam Fletcher. I'm the third chairman of ECSN AFTEC for my sins in the 53-year history of the association. Today, it's my great pleasure in Oxford to present the inaugural Roy Atterbury Award for Outstanding Achievement to Mick Elliott, a gentleman who I'm certain needs no introduction to you. However, I should provide some introduction and context as to why we are making this award and this video presentation. In the late 1960s, most franchise distributors, as they were known then, were privately owned and operating in a dynamic, high-growth market where both manufacturers' supply and customer demand fluctuated wildly. Well, there's a surprise. The fortunes of these early franchise distributors were won and lost based on their inventory investments. Roy Atterbury worked at SDC Components and ITT Semiconductor at Footscray. He headed their public relations department and was a regular contact with all the electronics trade editors and journalists of the day. However, Roy's real passion was writing. He had been freelancing outside of work in local papers successfully for many years. In around 1967, Roy got a break and became editor of the forerunner of what today is Components in Electronics magazine. This was a great place for Roy to work and gave him the opportunity to meet a wide range of organisations and business leaders across the electronic components supply network. It was obvious to Roy that in this immature but rapidly growing new electronic components industry, some coordination was required. In collaboration with the UK electronic components industry leaders, Roy set out to establish an industry association to represent franchise distributors and the electronic components manufacturers they served. This venture had the backing of the industry leaders who also acted as guarantors to the trade association and included Stephen Kenevy at Semiconductor Specialists, James Thorpe at Electronic Services, Michael Alderson at GDC Sales, Christopher Faithful at WEL Electronics, Dave Rayner at Best and Rayner, Waldo Thorne at Seldis, and George Stewart at Airco, the only distributor that still trades under its original name. Do you remember all that lot?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, a blast from the past. In June 1970, AFTEC held its inaugural member meeting at the go-to place at the time in 1970, the newly built and iconic Tower Hotel in London. This event was well attended, with many authorised distributors attending and signing up to become members of the new association and help to drive it forward. Roy, alongside his daytime job as editor, also became the first chairman of AFTEC and served the association for almost 20 years and was succeeded in 1989 by Gary Kibblewhite. Roy continued to support Gary at AFTEC and was responsible for the PR for several electronic component manufacturers and distributors, as well as the association, until he finally retired in 2004. Roy continued to write for the local papers and became a well-respected critic of theatrical and music productions in Kent and London. I first met Roy in 2005. We liked each other immediately, quickly became good friends and colleagues, enjoying a few beers and many cigarettes. Yes, I was an itinerant smoker then as well. As he passed on his knowledge of the industry to me, I could best describe Roy as a true gentleman, very modest and self-effacing, but with a strong idea of what he wanted to achieve. These are all similar qualities that are exhibited by Mick Elliott. When Roy finally shuffled off in 2007, over 300 people attended his funeral. In fact, people had to stand outside. It was amazing. And that included many of the friends and colleagues he'd met in the electronics industry. At the Electronic Components Supply Network, we're justifiably proud to have served the needs of our members for over 50 years. As a member-managed, not-for-profit industry association responsible for promoting electronic components from cradle to grave and rebirth. In June 2020, ECSN planned to celebrate its Golden Jubilee event at the Tower Hotel. in London, followed by a cruise on the River Thames. As part of these celebrations, ECSN Leadership Group discussed the establishment of an award to be presented on an ad hoc basis to an individual, and these discussions led to the establishment of the Roy Atterbury Award for Outstanding Achievement. And Mick Elliott was unanimously approved as the inaugural recipient. The COVID pandemic thwarted our Jubilee celebration events, plans that have been rescheduled several times and due to now to take place on the 23rd of June this year at the Tower Hotel, 53 years after the inaugural meeting in 1970. Our members and guests will still take a river cruise, and when we reached a point in the river close to the original Millwall ground, I had requested that the captain stops the vessel, holds the boat stationary, idling on the river. I then planned to ambush Mick so that I could, on behalf of the ECSN Leadership Group and its members, surprise them and make the presentation of the Roy Atterbury Award for Outstanding Achievements, close to where Mick grew up and was educated, but also outside his beloved Millwall Football Club. Well, that was the plan. Unfortunately, I discovered that Mick would also be bobbing around on the water at the same time as us. But while we'd be in London, Mick was on a well-deserved and long-planned cruise to the fields in Norway, so not where we wanted him to be. Fortunately, the folks at the Electronic Specifier came to our rescue and provided a crack video team, and the folks at Electronic Sourcing enabled us to use their facilities at the Electronic Components Show. So that's the background of why we're here today. I'm the third chairman of ECSN AFTEC, and having joined them in 2005, however, my involvement in the electronic components industry started much earlier, in 1979. And so for over 40 years, Mick, I have had the pleasure of enjoying Mick's very wide range of articles across many industry-leading publications. I have always found Mick's penmanship to be insightful, educational, and great fun to read. Mick can always be relied on to ask pertinent and penetrating questions needed to provide his readers with the answers to the questions that they themselves would like to ask. And I know that from first-hand experience, on occasions I've been at the sharp end of Mick's inquisitive and searching questioning during interviews, press conferences and at events. So, after a wait of almost 3 years, it's my great pleasure on behalf of the leadership group and its members of the Electronic Component Supply Network to thank Mick for his many years of service and look forward to our future collaborations. May I ask Karen Macarenas, a long-term colleague and good friend of the late Roy Atterbury, to present to Mick the inaugural Roy Atterbury Award for Outstanding Achievement. Okay.
It gives me very great pleasure to present this to you. All the very best for the future.
Thank you.
And wonderful.
Thank you. Rather like Christmas, I'm going to open them later.
And may I ask Jill Waite, AFTEC ESN Secretary, who worked with Roy for a great many years, to present Mick with a gift from the association to mark the presentation of the Roy Atterbury Award for Outstanding Achievement.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Mick, on behalf of ECSN.
Thank you.
And finally, may I ask Brian Harding, who's our PR and Marcom consultant at ECSN. Let me carry that for you. I'll carry that one, please. Yeah,
Well, from 1982, I came into this industry when we first bumped into each other for a press breakfast. Congratulations, and it's a really great pleasure.
Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you.
And we'll get the next one to you, Mick. Thank you very much. It's wonderful, and we really appreciate everything you've done for the industry and look forward to you doing it for very many years more. Thank you very much. You're right.
Well, thanks very much to Adam and to all the ECSN AFTEC alumni here today, and a couple of great colleagues as well, Georg Steinberger and my old mate Nick Foote as well from way back, and thanks to Karen and Jill for the presentation. You know, I have to say, as a Millwall supporter, the last award I got was 6 months in Wormwood Scrubs. So where I met some of my best contacts in the electronic component distribution industry. But it really is a privilege and an honour to receive this inaugural award, and especially, I have to say, as it recognises Roy Atterbury's contribution to AFTEC, ECN AFTEC as well. I mean, I first met Roy way back in the mists of time when he was editor of Electronic Components, and I was helping out in the press office of a show that some of you may remember called InternetCon. And this involved me meeting the press at Victoria Station with document case full of preview press releases, all in print, if anybody can actually remember those days. And Roy was assiduous in looking through everything that was given to him on the train down, and by the time he got to InternetCon, he had his plan of attack already in place and was ready to go. He really was a top-class editor. He could be a bit of a handful at times, I have to say. He was very demanding. Well, nothing wrong with that. You know, he wanted to get the job right. And as Adam says, not only was Roy, you know, absolutely centre stage in the formation of ECSN AFTEC, but also I know he travelled to other countries to give advice on how they might set up component distribution associations as well. If I have one caveat about Roy, you wouldn't want to get in a car with him, I can tell you, because Toad of Toad Hall looked like a pedestrian learner driver compared with Roy. I remember a trip up to Great Yarmouth to see STC Components, and I've never been so pleased to get home, I have to say. One, you know, it's great to get an individual award, but one thing I would say is that, you know, you can't do it without lots of support. And I've got to thank all my colleagues over the years, certainly all my years on Electronics Weekly, and then EPN magazine, and most latterly with a brilliant team, absolutely brilliant team at Electronic Specifier. So thoroughly, they've all made me welcome. They've been a massive support to me. And as I say, you can't do this sort of stuff on your own. You have to have a great team. As far as the industry goes, wow, you know, Adam read out that list of names there, and from the inaugural, and Airco, as he says, is pretty much the only one operating under its original name. But it really was a very different industry then. It was a lot of fun. It was could get a bit wild at times, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, when Motorola wouldn't share a distributor with Texas Instruments, suddenly a plethora of subsidiary companies span out to accommodate this. So there was a sort of say yes for RCA, and Yes Semiconductor was the name of the company. And I think a company called Mogul that looked after Texas Instruments. All these sprung up, and then everybody settled down for a while, and then, of course, suddenly the Japanese semiconductor companies came in, and the whole thing started again, and a whole bunch of Japanese-only distributors sprung up to service them as well. Since then, I would have to say, you know, it was a lot of fun in those days, lots going on. It's still fun now, but I would say it's, you know, well, you could argue it's just become more professional and much more, probably a bit more corporate as well. On the other hand, you know, there's no doubt that component distribution, you know, has absolutely established itself as a key part of the electronic component industry worldwide. Without distributors, the manufacturers would be going nowhere. They wouldn't meet customers that they wouldn't normally meet in a million years. And I think that's one of the great assets of distribution now, the support they give to customers. As talking outside at the show earlier, you know, as somebody said, you know, 40 years ago, the only technical support was a data sheet. Now, every distributor worth their salt has field application engineers out there, not just helping customers with their solutions, but helping create solutions for customers as well. So it's a fantastic industry. I'm absolutely flattered and honoured to be to receive this award from ECSN AFTEC. I'd like to thank everybody who's taken part in the discussions for this award, and wish ECSN AFTEC every success going forward. And more importantly, I hope you have a great night out in London in June. And just remember, you are passing Millwall football ground, so no sarky comments, or I will arrange to have the boat sunk. Thanks for all that, and all the very best to you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vic. That's wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.